I will be 100% honest with you guys. I never thought in a million years I would be making this video. The video of not only the WNBA, but a specific player in the WNBA. I have a lot of hours of content up now. You can go back and watch all of them. I don't think I've ever mentioned the WNBA before, let alone a single player from the league. Well, that all changes when a girl from Des Moines, Iowa shows up and puts everybody on notice and puts all eyeballs on women's basketball.
I'm going to go on the record and say she's the best female collegiate player ever.
But she is the Steph Curry of women's basketball. She is a marksman. She is a sniper. This girl pulls up from the parking lot.
Open in the corner. She got it.
Finished by Georgia once again.
Clark with an open look. Pushes in. 7 a game. Look at Clark. Yes.
That's not the shot. Clark connects.
Didn't want them to think there was 10. Clark. Oh my!
Now, in order to tell this story, in order to get into CaitlinClark, what we've seen, you saw the title, you saw the thumbnail. In order to get into that, about where we're at right now, we have to talk about the popularity of CaitlinClark and where that even comes from and why the spotlight has been shined directly on this young woman in particular. There's been great WNBA players in the past, from Cheryl Miller to Diana Taurasi, and then even now Maya Moore and your Sabrina Ionescu. You have great basketball players in the WNBA, women that play at a really high level, that have such a mind for the game and can do incredible things out there. But why CaitlinClark? Why is it her? Well, a lot of it is the popularity in terms of basketball, and a lot of this is a big part to the way that NBA is being played right now, but specifically Steph Curry and what he's done to the game of basketball, the influence that Steph Curry has had. See, before, the entertaining aspect of the game was the Dr. J's, was the Michael Jordan's, supreme athleticism in a body that none of us can have, 6'6", 6'9", 6'10", 7 feet, that can move and jump and be as strong and physical. We couldn't even imagine it. That was peak entertainment in basketball. The alley-oops, throwing some bodies around, dunking it, jumping over people. Vince Carter in the Olympics. These are the things that we found most entertaining in basketball until Steph Curry showed up. And there's some light that needs to be shined on snipers before him, like the Reggie Millers and the Ray Allens, but that was a gift. The Peja Stojakovic, all these guys were just a piece to the puzzle of a team, and a ability that helped stretch the floor, and an ability to help get points on the board and all that good stuff. But it was never the focal point of what your team did. It was never the main aspect of what your team was until Steph Curry, and then obviously he gets Klay Thompson with him, Kevin Durant with him, and it's the Splash Brothers out in Golden State. What Steph Curry did was show you that there's a different entertainment, the entertainment aspect of taking and making difficult shots. You see, before that, those shots are bad shots. NBA, even today, is still about how do we find ways to manipulate the defense to get as easy points as we can get. Easy buckets. And then here comes Steph Curry stepping back, off balance, offline, taking tough threes, taking difficult shots and making them. And he's turning a difficult shot into a makeable shot. And that is where the entertainment aspect came into the three ball. And this young woman has been able to take that kind of lightning in a bottle, if you will, and took it to new heights in women's basketball. Now, obviously, I'm not saying she took three-point shooting to new heights. Steph Curry and all these boys are still the ones doing that. But she did it in the women's side of it. We've never seen a girl, especially in college, pull up from the range that she has, hit shots the way that she has. So you go, okay, that's one aspect of it. But it really came back to a couple years ago in the NCAA tournament. And it kind of led me to believe what we were kind of seeing. It kind of started shaping form of what CaitlinClark, the expectation for her storyline was going to be, especially as she moved on to the next level. And 2 years ago, it kind of planted the seed for what we saw last year and what we're already seeing. Well, I say last year, it was only a few months ago, what we saw from the NCAA tournament and what we're seeing from her now in the WNBA, and why the scrutiny and why the expectations and the burden that she has seems to be a bit unfair and definitely unusual for a WNBA player. You see, 2 years ago, she goes into the tournament, has a phenomenal run with Iowa, and everything's great. Everybody, the praise is there. But the spotlight isn't quite the way it was this year, and obviously she needed that national championship game. But there was a storyline created in that national championship game. See, before that, she was just a phenomenal player. You could even say that she was the best player in college basketball, and that's perfectly fine. She was phenomenal. But against LSU, as soon as that game ended, Angel Reese did CaitlinClark a massive favor or gave her a massive burden, depending on how you look at it. See, Angel Reese at the end of that game gives her the "you can't see me" right back at her face. She gives her the "where's your ring" right in front of her face, and at that exact moment, Angel Reese became the villain. Fair or unfair, that's just the reality of it. And in doing so, she automatically made CaitlinClark not only the best player or the greatest player that we've seen in college basketball, but she immediately made her the babyface. She made her the hero of the story. And whenever you have a storyline that could take place, that's what transcends you from basketball into pop culture. And that's exactly what happened to CaitlinClark. That's exactly why Iowa had almost every single one of their regular season games televised this past season in college basketball. And it's why everybody had their eyeballs on CaitlinClark. But it's important to remember that story. It's important to remember her and Angel Reese's story, because it was a clash that led to each other in that second round or third round of the tournament. And when it happened, it became the most watched game ever in the history of women's basketball. The most watched game ever. And the reason why I say it's important is because I realized right then and there, not during that LSU game, because yes, again, most watched view, but it was afterwards. Now we know CaitlinClark did her thing. LSU lost. CaitlinClark wins. She gets her revenge. Memes, gifs all over the place of that game specifically. But when I realized the importance of the storyline and the importance of that is not really much to do with basketball, is after the fact. She wins. She goes on. They play UConn and Paige Beckers, who Paige Beckers could very well be better than anybody. And the views declined. Not as much as the LSU game. She wins that game, goes on to the national championship game. Here it is. This is what we've all been wanting to see, right? Is CaitlinClark get crowned, win the national championship game. Views also not as high as the LSU game. So I'm like, okay, so it's not, the views that are coming in are not necessarily coming in for basketball. They're coming in for storyline. They're coming in for CaitlinClark's story, not CaitlinClark's ability to win a game. They lose to South Carolina. It is what it is. CaitlinClark is a number 1 draft pick. She goes to the IndianaFever. Indiana has now back-to-back number 1 picks last year and this year. It's a real bad team. They haven't been good. But that should be a clear indication to you that CaitlinClark is dealing with something we've never seen before. Especially, we may have seen it happen kind of organically, but the expectation of it hasn't really been there. Now, what do I mean? I'm talking about being the number 1 overall pick. It comes with expectations. It comes with almost an unfair burden on you, correct? We all know that, right? It's nothing new. She's not dealing with anything any other number 1 pick has ever dealt with from that standpoint. From having to, number 1, live up to individual expectations that are almost unbelievable, almost unfair, but then also live up to the ability to take a bad team and make them prominent. Take a bad team, take them to the playoffs, and make them, at some point, become championship contenders. Those are unfair burdens that every number 1 pick has in every sport. We're seeing it now with Victor Wembanyama. Shout out my San Antonio Spurs. The expectations he had are crazy. He's supposed to be the best prospect, the best rookie since LeBron James. Do you know how hard that is to do? Do you realize how insane that expectation is? Oh, and on top of that, you're supposed to get the Spurs back into the playoffs, and you're supposed to be the next Tim Duncan of the San Antonio Spurs, and we expect you to win some championships with San Antonio, a team that hasn't been to the playoffs in a while now. Unrealistic expectations again. That happens everywhere. I promise you, Caleb Williams has those unfair expectations for the Chicago Bears. He has to win Rookie of the Year. He has to look like a potential future all-star of the league at quarterback, and he has to take a bad team in the Bears that have been bad for a very long time and make them competitive pretty quickly. CaitlinClark is dealing with that, but the one thing that CaitlinClark is dealing with that these other people don't deal with is the burden of the league. See, Caleb Williams isn't there to save the league. Caleb Williams isn't looked at as, hey, you have to be the face of the NFL and you have to single-handedly up our viewerships and up our revenue. No, nobody's expecting him to do that. Even Victor Wembanyama, who had the ability to do so, even Victor Wembanyama, who had so much hype going into the season, he still did not have to be the face of the league. He still is not looked at to save the NBA or to propel the NBA into new heights and into new revenue that the NBA has never seen before. He's not expected to do that. CaitlinClark is. See, CaitlinClark does not only have to be individually the best player we've ever seen play basketball, the best female player we've ever seen play basketball. That's already a crazy expectation. That's just the baseline. She not only has to take a terrible team in the IndianaFever and make them championship contenders, again, unrealistic, or not necessarily unrealistic, but lofty expectations. That's not only the tip of it. She has to take the WNBA, the entire league, into new heights. She has to be the face of the league. She has to force people to tune in to watch her play, and it's either going to be people that want to watch her win and succeed or people that want to watch her lose and fail. She has to get the attention because all of the eggs that the WNBA have, they put into the basket of CaitlinClark, #1 in jersey sales. The IndianaFever, I just told you, are the worst team. They've been the worst team for the last few years now, and yet this year they have the most televised game. Well, how do they have more televised games than the Aces or any of these other teams that are actually really, really good? It's because of CaitlinClark. Oh, by the way, their games are all selling out. All of a sudden, the worst team in the league is selling out. They have more fans in attendance than the good teams in the WNBA. CaitlinClark doesn't have the same kind of expectation on her. It's greater. She has to succeed, not for her, not for the team, for the entire league. And these women are not going to let her just come in and walk all over them. Even though they understand the importance of her, even though they're on chartered planes for the first time ever, they're flying private. Thank you, CaitlinClark. But guess what? They want to take that shine still. Right? For these other players, they're saying, hey, come for Caitlin, stay for us. If you come in to watch CaitlinClark and you see her lose by 20 and you see Sabrina Ionescu fake her out, knock a 3 in her face and give you the Michael Jordan shoulder shrug, maybe you stay for her. Maybe you stay for Kelsey Plum. Maybe you stay for these other women who are very talented. But man, those are lofty expectations. Why? Because like I said, in college, what CaitlinClark showed us that these viewers, all of this viewership and all this attention that's on her specifically from the female side is not there for basketball. They're there for the storyline of CaitlinClark. They want a superhero. They want Superwoman to be Superwoman. And it's unfair because coming into this league, coming into this season, the expectations should have been low, but they're so high. Why should they have been low? Well, because she didn't have time. WNBA does not like to operate at the same time the NBA operates. For obvious reasons, they don't want to mess up their viewership, right? If you have to pick between the WNBA and the NBA, which one do you think you're watching? So they know that. So what do? Their season begins when the NBA season's coming to an end. But it kind of screws the rookies for the WNBA because they're basically going from draft night to games immediately. They're going from, I just finished my college season, I just had the greatest night of my life being drafted #1 overall, to, hey, you got games in about a month. You got a few weeks to learn these teammates, to learn how to play together and get out there and get it done. And oh, by the way, CaitlinClark, you better start averaging 30 and 10 real fast because we need it. The WNBA is relying on CaitlinClark to be the best player in the league, and she does not have the grace, and she is not given the patience that every other prospect, every other young star with these lofty expectations have. CaitlinClark is not given that patience. She's not being given that grace. She has to make it happen immediately, and whether fair or unfair, it's the reality of the situation. Because like I said, they're not here to watch basketball. They're not here to learn the X's and O and learn the other players in the organization. They're here to see CaitlinClark be a superwoman. I, for one, am rooting for CaitlinClark to do so. And I'm going to be honest with you. If you're rooting for CaitlinClark to fail, you're kind of rooting for the WNBA to fail.